This video is going to be all about transitioning from the book to beginning to make the poster. And I want to take a moment to talk a little bit about a few new things that you'll need to be paying attention to when mentoring your students through making the poster. I want to talk a little bit about point of view, composition and layout, and integrating text and image. Before we dive into each of those three concepts, I want to talk a little bit about the actual shape and proportions of the poster your students will be designing, because it is a rather unique shape. The posters are designed to exist on public transportation, specifically on the sides and interiors of buses, and as such they're going to be long horizontal rectangles. I've taken a second to draw one in my book. One of the fantastic things about our book is that it's big enough to be able to fit a rough draft of our poster design right inside of the book. We are encouraging you to have your students make a rough draft of their poster design before moving to their final project, so that they can work out all of the kinks and they can explore their ideas at scale. So our poster paper dimensions are 9 inches tall by 24 inches wide. We have a 1-inch border all of the way around the paper, leaving us with a rectangle that is 7 inches tall and 22 inches wide. That is our actual image area. This is where your students can work out all of their ideas. Let's talk for a second about point of view. I want to use the example from this week's synchronous session where we are topping up a cup full of water to talk about thresholds. So if we take that cup and we look at it top down, like this, it's pretty hard to tell what's going on. Our point of view is an aerial one looking down on the cup, and when it comes to this cup full of water, looking at it from a side-on angle may actually give us a much better ability to understand a rise in water level. When thinking about making a drawing in response to any of our challenge questions, we want to encourage our students to think about the point of view from which they would be viewing their answer. Are they in the middle of it? Are they way far away looking across the landscape? Are they in the air looking down? Are they on the ground looking up? As you can see in these two different illustrations of this cup of water, my first illustration is looking at it from the top down, similar to the way that you see it here in the camera. This approach to rendering my cup of water ends up being a little bit too simple, and the point of view does not allow me to fully understand what I'm looking at. By shifting the point of view and looking at this glass of water in cross-section with the glass in front of me rather than looking down on it, I can draw it in a way that we understand what's happening. We're outside because one of the aspects of composition and layout that I want to talk about has to do with point of view and perspective. When we talk about point of view, we're simply talking about from where are we viewing the image that we're looking at. And depending on where I place this camera, it can radically change your perspective on the scene that I see in front of me. So if I just turn the camera around and keep it at head height, this is the way the scene in front of me looks. But lowering that camera down can radically change the perspective. And you can see now that by lowering my point of view, I have 2/3 of my image is now ground and only 1/3 is sky, as opposed to before, or it's almost 50-50. If this image is going to be about the clouds in the sky, does it make sense for me to have half of my image be sky and half of my image be grass? Or should I lower my perspective, lower my point of view, and make it much more about the sky with a very small sliver of land? So I want to talk a little bit about perspective real quick. One of the things that allows us to feel like these trees are moving away from us is the fact that they get smaller as they get away from us. The smallest tree is the one in the back, and the largest tree is the one in the foreground. Let's move inside and talk about how we can translate that to our drawings in our accordion books. I want to draw a group of trees and make them feel like they are moving away from me in space. So I'm going to render a really simple tree using a series of scribbles and a silhouette technique here. So I'm just sort of scribbling something that looks a little bit like a conifer or pine tree, and then I'm adding a simple trunk. So if I want to create an illusion of depth in here and making it feel like there's more trees that are moving away from us, drew my foreground trees first, I'm going to draw my background trees second. So by darkening up the back tree, I can give it the feeling that it is actually behind the front tree. The human eye equates darkness with distance, and so that creates an illusion that that tree is behind the other tree. So I'm going to add a few more trees, continuing to make them darker as they get further away, smaller as they get further away. By doing that, I create an illusion of depth. It feels like that there is space that moves back. So it is a really simple way that you can help your students to create an illusion of depth or space inside of their poster. It is important to remember that we're mentoring our students through the process of designing a poster in response to our challenge questions, and ultimately this poster is going to live on the side of a bus or the interior of a bus. Because of that, it has a very unique shape. But right now I want to talk about some practical examples of the ways that your students can use composition and layout to help tell the story of their answer. One of the first and easiest strategies is to create one big image. So let's take a look at some examples. Sometimes putting our big idea in the middle of our space is the best way to make our point. This approach is great when your answer is singular, when the answer your students have makes sense to be depicted in one big image. One of the challenges we face is that our poster shape is a long horizontal rectangle. Because it is designed to be seen on the side of a bus or in the overhead sections of a bus, it is an extremely horizontal rectangle. One of the other options that students will have is to fracture or divide the picture space. One of the easiest approaches to using the space we have available is to work left to right. In the case of this image that's on the screen now, I've divided the page top to bottom by putting black on the bottom and yellow on the top, and the text reads left to right. It's the way that we're used to reading, and presenting your information in that sort of linear format may make total sense when dealing with something that is more narrative. Similarly, students may want to divide their image in half. So this image by Dr. Seuss pulls together the one big image approach and functions as a left to right reading image. You can see that the tree chopping machine is moving from left to right across the page, and the text flows from left to right across the page, so those two things end up in sync. Students could divide the page in half in order to create comparisons, a before and after kind of a feel. They could further subdivide the page like this Calvin and Hobbes strip in order to create the feeling of narrative or story that moves along, or aggressively subdivide the page like this section from a comic book illustration. Students can divide their space into a grid if they've got lots of information that needs to be presented in their answers. This is an example of a very simple grid layout, and here are a few others that show how a grid can be used to imply narrative or sequence or comparison. Grids are effective for being able to create some visual interest and to create an organized way to present several different options or several sequential options in storytelling. One of the things that will become vital while working on images designed for public transportation systems is integrating text and image effectively. There are some strategies that we can use, like this one, which is called an F-shape hierarchy, where we use the biggest point is the largest text on the page, and the sub-points or details get smaller and smaller as they go. So the main point broadcasts quickly and efficiently, and the things underneath sort of support the main idea. Here's some examples from Toulouse-Lautrec, and you can see the way that he is artistically dealing with his text and integrating it into the image by using some of the same colors and by adding a hand-drawn feel to the text rather than using a typeset approach. One of the other strategies can be to use a sort of columns and chunks approach and divide your pictorial space into sections that are dedicated to text-based information and sections that are image-based information. When you have longer text, that same column and chunks approach can give you room to make your statement big and bold while still having plenty of room to have a complex image to support it.